minute with all that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's just page
Yeah.
3.
We're good.
We're good.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dallas Newbury. I've lived in Waianga for quite some time. I'm speaking on behalf of my parents, Ray and Karen Newbury, who are commercial fishermen out of Waianga, have been for the past 38 years, and we've been wharf users for a lot longer than that. So needless to say, we're speaking on the proposed changes to the current fees and charges for harbour facilities. What they believe that the proposed increase in fees is excessive. I won't go into percentages of increases that you're proposing because I know what they are. Also, they don't support charging an application fee for a licence, considering you already have to pay for the use of the wharf, and at present they feel that that works very well. It just seems to be extra revenue gathering, and that is the general consensus out there from what I have heard. There's no mention of what the actual cost for the licence is, only what the application fee is. The user pays when using the Waianga Wharf has been in existence for years and years. We pay a yearly fee to the TCDC for this usage, and that has always worked well. There's a lack of infrastructure on the Waianga Wharf for the proposed increases. So over the last 5 years that I'm aware of, for the commercial fishermen, the users, there's been a new water hose and there's been skip bins on the wharf, which since there's been a change in service contract for those bins, there's a disgusting smell, tourists comment on it, people getting off the ferry comment on it, it's not a good look. We supply export product for New Zealand, and so we want to look after our product, and we can't ask for extra money for our fish that are landed. So any increase is cutting into the bottom line of your small businesses. So that's why we're saying the fees need to be looked at further. And as an exporter, you pride yourself on providing top quality product, taking your time with the product, to be rushed when you get to the wharf. You do what you can, you pack the fish, you do what you can on your way in. If that's rough, that's not always the case. To be charging in half-hour slots and to be having to be hurried, that just leaves room for accidents, hazards, and then you're going down a health and safety route, and I feel that that needs to be looked at further. After the past year, and coming off the back of a COVID year, and a lot of small businesses are well down on revenue, I just feel that this is unacceptable to be putting that kind of, unethical actually, to be putting those kind of increases on a small business. The Prime Minister also openly stated that she would help small businesses, and this doesn't seem to be reflected at all in these proposed changes. And how will it be monitored and policed? Will it be electronic? Will it be manual? And there seems to be, there's downfalls on both sides. If it's an actual person, then that's an extra salary, and that will be cutting into that extra revenue that you've just gathered. So I feel that that needs to be looked at as well. At the moment, there is no harbour master in situ, so if there's any problems at the wharf, you either deal with them yourself. Often they can't be left. You've got a yacht that sits down there advertising on the wharf for a lot of the day, and that is not okay. Why can one party advertise and other parties can't? That reflects badly on all the charter operators. So that also needs to be looked at. It's hard for the ferry to manoeuvre around that vessel. So again, with no harbour master there, that has to be dealt with yourself.
Dallas, you've put in for 2 submissions. Are you doing the second one now?
No. Do you want me to move on to the second one?
Well, you've done your 5 minutes for your first one.
Fine, okay. So that's where we're at with that. Second is my personal submission. So you may or may not want to know, I worked for Auckland Council. I worked in Mayor Len Brown's office for 3.5 years running his office. We had to consult. It doesn't seem to be the case with this. we are a directly affected party, and to get notification 4 days prior to a submission is not okay. If you're a directly affected party, they should have been notified that this was happening. So again, I've touched on, I feel personally the proposed increases are excessive, there's lack of infrastructure. So the wharf is a public place. What other user groups will be being charged? Will pleasure boats be being charged when they weigh in fish and sit there for photos? What other groups will be being charged, or is it just a targeted group? So also I'm worried about the monitoring. I won't go into that, I've touched on that. Also, businesses could be forced to, coming off the back of a COVID year, and I know a lot of people are significantly down, especially the charter operators. So I'm worried that these increases, as they are so high, would push businesses to the wall, or maybe staff would also lose their jobs. So I think the big picture needs to be looked at. Businesses can't keep absorbing the costs off their bottom line when they can't pass on those extra fees. And tourism-wise, I really feel for the charter operators, because are people going to want to come to Whiringa? We have seen a drop in numbers, obviously, around COVID. Are they going to want to come here and pay extra fees to get on and off a boat? They'll go somewhere else, and that has a knock-on effect to accommodation, restaurants, gas stations, shopping, the whole works. So I just feel that you haven't listened to user groups on other subjects. I think you really need to stand up and have a listen about this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions of Dallas? Being none? Okay, Mark Jones. Welcome, Mark.
Did you want to hear again, or is something?
No.
Thank you.
Good to go?
There you go.
Guys, as Murray said, my name's Mark Jones, and I own the Glass Bottom Boat. Talking about the wharf issues as well, about the proposed rate increase. So I'll keep one pretty brief, but what it's stated in the long-term plan is that TCDC were going to review the charges for commercial use of our wharfs, which currently vary across the district. You will be engaging with key parties, including user groups, over the next 12 months, and as part of the review, significant changes may be proposed. So you've said you're going to do that, but it hasn't happened. So I'd like to think I'm one of the more key parties and haven't had one single phone call. And as you just mentioned, we got an email 4 days before the submissions were shut. The Glass Bottom Boat's always been approachable and engaged with local council whenever been asked, but obviously never been asked at all about this. In terms of tour boats, I know of one company that had 2 boats, which has already sold a boat. The boats moved to another area, and another small company, as I found out yesterday, has actually just moved their whole family to Auckland because there's not enough work. So if you guys increase the rates now, all you're going to do is hurt all the remaining businesses in these uncertain times. Job done.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Questions, Mark?
Questions?
No. Thanks, Mark. Data. Anna Horn.
Oh, me. Thank you.
Not this one.
Once again, I'm here to say, please, 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 can you move our Mercury Bay cycling strategy from the nice to have to the must do. We've now waited for the last 3 years for our budget to come into line, and we're at that moment, but we're still on the nice to have. I spent quite a bit of time reading through submissions yesterday into this LTP process, and was absolutely flabbergasted and delighted how many people are talking cycling and walking and active transport. This is the first LTP where I've seen so much enthusiasm from so many areas within the district. And so I would like to fully support our community board in their submission to move our cycling strategy onto the must-haves, not the nice-to-haves. And I'd like to personally support the Kauranga cycle trail advocates, the people over in Katuna who are trying desperately to get in safety cycle and walkways in their community as well, and I know there are others. Our cycling strategy, which was passed by council in August 2019, is ready to go. It's a very small budget compared with many of the other budgets. And for example, don't pave another car park here in Monk Street. That money could easily cover the walkway requirements in advance in Katuna and also our cycling budget. You know, like, we've got to stop paving paradise. The other day I biked over to Hotwater Beach for a very nice coffee. Huge widening of the roads around Cook's Beach. Not a single sign of any markings for cycleways as things are being redone. Why isn't this simple move being instructed? At Hotwater Beach, massive paved parking lots now. Where are the tourists? You might have heard that Brent crude now is just hitting $70 a barrel. We have to be really thinking ahead. We have a major crisis. We aren't isolated on the Coromandel. We're part of a global situation which is heading off in very unusual and unexpected directions. We know that in 10 years we've got to bring our carbon budgets right down. People in this town are seriously wanting to contribute personally to that effort, but we need to be able to cycle and walk and scooter and so forth safely. And one of my huge motivations for working now for over 6 years on this project is to get safe access to our school for our students. And of course, I'm sure that what we see here at Mercury Bay, the absolute schmozzle of all these tents down there every morning, can be avoided if we have safe cycle and walkways and scooterways to our school. The emphasis has to move just for what us old people want. We have to look after our young people. This is their world and we really have to help them out. First of all, by being able to access their education safely. So that's my main issue. Thank you, Murray. I'd just like, if I may just indulge for a minute, just to say I really totally support council continuing to fund our sites. I worked for almost 20 years at our local information centre as we established it. We took huge pride in our professionalism, and I think council is dumbing down things from removing from the national eyesight.
Okay,
system.
questions of Anna?
Good thing, cycling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
We're going to go on to Stephen Holt, please. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. A little bit daunting suddenly popping in here. So, excuse me. I'd just like to first of all say thank you very much for the opportunity, and I don't know how often you get a pat on the back, but to my mind TCDC seems to be working quite well at the moment. I've been a ratepayer in the area for 40-something years, and things seem to be improving, which is always a good thing to see. I'm speaking, referring to the mollets, the rubbish collection, the issues around all of that sort of stuff in Footpath. I really have little to say about any other areas because I don't know, but if I can throw in a little one about the transfer station at Matarangi, I think that should stay. People from Footpath use it regularly. It's an asset for them as far as green waste is concerned. I don't know that they do much with the recycling, except you can take metal, scrap iron and that sort of stuff there. So that's a good option for the locals, which Matarangi, Footpath is part of as far as Matarangi is concerned. Okay, so blue bags. as a starting point, I just wonder how long blue bags should continue, whether we should be using plastic. It's a one-off situation. Probably TCDC's had that one thrown at them many times before. And obviously the only other solution to that is another sort of wheelie bin, something that is used again and again and again. And there are issues around that one. But as far as the blue bag's concerned, the situation at Footpath at the moment, everything seems to be working well. But we do have to sort of think of the future, and this Coromandel is supposed to be green and clean, and certainly blue bags on the side of the road don't sort of lend that to that issue. So, and of course, with the blue bags, in Footpath in particular, we've got an issue with seagulls and dogs and other birds. And for that reason, the molluscs are the place where the blue bags often get put. And when people are going home on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, putting the blue bag out, unless they've got some gallerator, and I've never seen one of those devices in Footpath. There could be the odd one around a corner somewhere, but they're not common, that's for sure. So the blue bag goes down to the mollusk, which is fine for the most part. Come the high peak season, Easter, Labour weekend, Christmas, the mollusks don't cope. And well, the mollusks cope. The retrieval and removal of the blue bags isn't up to scratch. So we often, just at those 3 times a year, we'll often end up with a surplus of blue bags sitting around the outside, piled up against the mollusks. And of course, when you've got that situation, you also get the odd TV set put there, and a bicycle or 2, and a few other bits and pieces of rubbish as well. I don't know what the answer is, whether you have a camera, you do an audit and try to find owners of some of this, but there are issues involved in that. However, the mollusks are good for the most part, and I'm talking probably 90% of the time. They beat the animals, they provide a better environment down the streets because the rubbish isn't there. They can be a bit unsightly, there can be a bit of smell, and there's, as I mentioned, the attraction of dumping other stuff there. But the positives far outweigh the negatives. For the most part, for most of the year, the mollusks work well. Sorry?
Winding it up.
Oh, okay.
You've got about 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Just a thought about the roadside collection. Could one truck do the job? At the moment, we have 2. Yesterday, there was a collection. One truck came through and took the recycling. Another truck came through and took the glass and the blue bag. For 90% of the time, to my mind, one truck would do it, and there's a bit of a saving if they've got a truck that does that. Probably the biggest issue at the moment are visitors to the area. They don't know whether to put the blue bag out, they don't know whether to put the recycling out and the glass, and they don't know how full the glass should be. So the container gets left, but the visitor's gone, because the container holds too much glass. Then we need to improve the communication. The owners of the property...
I'm going to wind it up. Have we got any questions? Have we got any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yes, yes, I do. So yesterday we had a submission from a people. They suggest that if they kept the mollusks, they could do without the curbside. Would that work for Footpath in your opinion as well? Just have one?
Just the mollusks.
Just the mollusks.
No curbside collection.
Just, it's a random idea I'm throwing at you.
There's no system for glass in Footpath.
Right.
That was taken away a year or 2 ago. Mm-hmm. If the glass, the rubbish and the recycling could be handled there, and you can't get cans and tins that go into it's only paper and card recycling.
Right, okay.
So it really wouldn't work.
Okay.
Sandra?
Yeah, Do you think it's pretty much like having a transfer station right at the entry to your beach is an appropriate way of handling rubbish? So the difference, just pointing out the difference for
Yeah.
Peto is that they've actually got quite a good location for their monarchs.
Yeah, and TCDC's looked for a location for a transfer station similar, and it just hasn't worked. But a transfer station would solve the issue.
Yeah, we've looked for sites potentially for that too, and we've exhorted the community to do that as well, without success. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to Christine Petrie and Sandra Wilson, please.
So Sandra said her apologies, she's tied up at work. So just stuck with me. I'm here submitting on behalf of Thames-Coromandel Trust. So I'm a trustee, secretary treasurer of the trust, and we operate the Coromandel Town Information Centre. So our submission is that we strongly support continued funding for the information centres. And we request that the council also consider increasing the funding just for one-off this year by 6% to reflect the increase in costs due to legislated wage increases which have gone up 7% year on year, 6% this year, which we couldn't do anything about. So wages and on costs make up 65 to 70% of our costs each year. So just the information centre is the heart of our community. Coromandel Coal was quite, isolated. Several years ago we had a survey, the Business Association ran a survey, showed really strong support for the information centre, not just from businesses but surprisingly from community members as well. And this cross-community support is really reflected day in, day out through support for fundraising. We get volunteers, we get advertisers, sponsorships, people that don't actually necessarily benefit. They're still, you would think they're not benefiting and they're contributing. In effect, two of our trustees are not in tourism, so just, as an indication. The information centre fills the information gap by being a place to go for expert local knowledge about services, events, activities, infrastructure, road closures, power outages, all of that sort of stuff that's happening, as it's happening, sort of thing. Many homes, because we've got quite an elderly population and it's relatively poor, many of our homes aren't digitally enabled. There's no local citizens advice bureau, and the people in the community rely on the centre to assist them when they do need access to Wi-Fi, when they need tickets to go somewhere, when they don't know how to fill in a form, they can't read the form, they don't, like KiwiSaver banking forms, they want to know about public facilities, rubbish collections, all that stuff that you and I might get online. They're not able to get that online. And also, access to local government services, where do they go to, what do they do, and justices of the peace, of course, who is it? And then people also ask us about accommodation, employment opportunities, healthcare providers, passport applications, electoral roll, just a whole raft of questions. And it's also a place where people come for what we would consider normal things that allow them to live independently, like one person rings regularly to find out what day it is. So, people walking their dogs and they pick up the dogs. And just to give you a feel that, even though tourism's down, we've used that time really wisely during that COVID year. Some initiatives that we've done to support community wellbeing. We've introduced a text messaging system, free text messaging system to let people know what's going on. So it's for the text of power outage or whatever, or it's something on at the Hauraki House or whatever. We worked with the gold mine when we hosted the centre's mailbox, but even with people in the community. So kids posted letters into this very large, elaborate recycled centre's mailbox, and each letter was replied to. 1 minute to go. Okay, so I'll move on. So I know that decision makers often view information centres as profit centres. A simple business model is not the correct fit. Information centres are more correctly seen as lost leaders, where the value they generate it's not being quantified in dollar terms, can't even quantify it in dollar terms, let alone end up on their P&L. So while it is difficult to put a value on the work, the Treasury CBAC's tool this year, whether you like it or not, has started to put value on some social things. So having access to general health, according to them, is worth $5,700 a year. Having contact with your neighbours, participating in communities worth $8,500 a year.
Right, we'll open up the questions now.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Have you thought about doing coin operated access to the toilets there?
Yes, we
Because
have. So
they're the most used toilets. And I just think
yeah, we have. So
you'd be amazed.
yeah, no. So we had honest. So for a start, they're not our toilets, but I mean we discussed that at long term. But yes, so there's that. But
Last time I used them.
there were donation boxes in there, and that just led we had 3 or 4 break-ins in succession, just because of we've had quite a few issues with break-ins there, and when we had the coin boxes, it was a lot worse, and the money was stolen, and we just got rid of it.
But that's an honesty box, which is quite
different. Yeah, so we have
I
thought
think it'd be
about
a bit
it, but it's just, like to us, that is a stream of income. We're looking at larger, bigger, so that's why we're a charity. So we're going for grants, we're trying to get sponsorship money, that sort of thing. So we're actually trying to go for bigger access for income. So, and also if we take the money from that box, then we're going to be responsible for maintaining the toilets, and we're not toilet monitors, we're an information centre.
Hello, Tony, your other.
I like your use of text messaging as a way of communicating.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what the uptake of that is? Like for every 10 or 20 or 100 you send out?
Yeah, so it's been quite hard to get uptake at the moment because we have to get, because of the Privacy Act, we can't sort of just help ourselves. So it's gradually growing, and everyone that gets it likes it and tells people. So, it is growing.
Very good, thanks.
Yeah, and I think for us, the people that are getting it that do have access to social media, like people like me, it's actually quite useful because, you don't always get what you need on social media. So it's just for us to keep trying to get that message out there that you just get a short, sharp text message, something's on, tickets nearly sold out, you better come in today, that kind of thing,
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, I just had a question. You talked about the information centre providing assistance to people that where organisations or companies might have closed in Coromandel. So what have you had as far as closures, as far as banks and?
Oh, no,
things
not
like
with, so with respect to not help, just helping them access the services, so they don't have access to the internet, they don't know how to fill in a form. We get people that struggle to fill in a form and they come in and they ask us to help them fill in a form. So with respect to closures, the BNZ's closing and the Post Bank's gone. You probably could ask John. And other businesses, I think tourism, some of the B&Bs have really struggled because that's more of an international tourist type. Yeah, international tourists tend to like B&Bs. Kiwis like to cook their own food. So yes, so we've had a reasonable summer, but one of the things that I had to skip over was through the generosity of the community board, we were able to coordinate a specific digital marketing campaign for Coromandel Town.
Yeah.
We've answered the question. Have you got another question?
But potentially with those closures, you can see there'd be more work that you'd have to do.
I would say so. Yeah, I don't know what the plans are for the BNZ. Apparently it's going to be some great big machine and
Okay.
you don't know.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on now to Alistair Brickle. Alistair has 2 submissions, one on page 262 and one on page 209. Welcome, Alistair.
Morning, can I sit down and go a few questions?
Yep.
So there's actually 3 submissions, two of mine, one for KRA. There was 494 and 493 and 591.
There you go.
Okay, so can I do the KRA one as well? And
Yeah, well, just do them both.
Katuna said I would have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll try and keep it short. Okay, speaking to the number 494, which is the Katuna Residents Ratepayers Association one, my submission on behalf of them was to do with the dark sky proposal. And quite a few, I think, of you are familiar with the idea to have the Katuna Peninsula designated a dark sky community, sanctioned by the International Dark Sky Association. And we're actually having a meeting with Heather Bruce later in this month, so I won't go on about that too long. But we had a communication with Bruce Baker about the requirement, there's a requirement to be officially recognised to have legislation in place which controls lighting for new developments. And the costing was going to be in the order of $40,000, we were told. We would like to see that funded by TCDC as a largely internal funding. And we think longer term, we'd like to see this expanded out to the whole Coromandel Peninsula. And we could perhaps become the first dark sky community, dark sky district in New Zealand. It may not be an International Dark Sky Association accreditation, but it could be through the Royal Astronomical Society of New Zealand. Because longer term, we want to protect the whole peninsula from light pollution. There will be different criteria for towns and for Coromandel and other places, but that is something that I look work towards. So I think this legislation change, the funding could benefit the whole district, not just the Katuna Peninsula. So I won't say any more about that because we'll be having further meetings about that. On to my own submission, 2 parts to it. Following on from the dark skies with street lights and also with Katuna regs and ratepayers, we've been asking for ages for us to be consulted if any street lights are put in. As far as the location, are they necessary, what style, and so on and so forth. So we'd like the community to be involved, probably through the Katuna Residents and Ratepayers Association for any new street lights. Also, relating to the KRA submission as well, is the footpath extension to the west of the Katuna boat ramp. A few years ago, NZTA and TCDC had a deal whereby NZTA would do it to the east and you guys would do it to the west. The west side has been put off again and again and again. We'd like to see that advanced up the list of projects. But Brent Page will be talking about that. One of the possible ways to fund this legislation change for the dark skies, the requirement, is the Summertime magazine. Now, Murray, I've talked about this a lot, and Tony's sick of me talking about it as well. But I think there is no need for the council to be producing a Summertime magazine every year. It's expensive to produce. It's not council's core business. Let's take those very good people, redeploy them. They can perhaps work on the dark skies legislation, amongst other things. We do not need a Summertime magazine. It competes with private industry doing the same things. If council wants to put pages in about rubbish collection, they could buy a few pages advertising in a commercial publication. It's just duplication. It's not council's core business. Public conveniences. I know that the Tyrol one just being replaced. I don't know, was that really necessary? Maybe it was, but I've used it, the mail one, obviously, quite a few times, and it seemed fine. Okay, it's old, but it was working. The cost of replacing these seems to be a little bit high. It's great. We've got lots in the community. It's really good. Tourists really appreciate it. We get a lot of international tourists at Airbnb. They love them, but they don't need the latest model, I don't think.
They just want a standard better than a long drop.
Well, and they had that really well. You know, they're quite good standard, despite all that. Okay, what else we got here? Matarani Golf Course.
The long drop.
Okay, Matarani Golf Course. I used to be a member of the Matarani Ratepayers Association. I think it's a wonderful asset. In the time I've been in the community, I've seen Matarani go from one house, the old farmhouse, to what it is now. In the future, it's going to expand hugely. All that farm area is going to be covered with houses in probably not in my lifetime, but in my kids' lifetime. That green space is tremendously precious. We don't make any more green spaces, so it needs to be saved. And I think council needs to work maybe exclusively with the Matarani Ratepayers Association on their solutions. I know you've had discussions for decades about this with them. I think you need to listen to them what the solution is, but we need to save that. Rubbish collection, well, again, I've flashed a few years about this before, about incineration. Incineration is the way to go with rubbish. Having visited the one in Bern in Switzerland, a new one, they take everything in our blue bags, goes into the incineration plant, including all sofas and things. They burn it at really high temperature. All the dioxins are destroyed by the high temperature process. They get out of there 23 megawatts of power every annually from that. They get 5 tons of metal a day, 5 tons of non-ferrous metal, which 5 tons of iron, 5 tons of non-ferrous metal a day, which they can sell, make profit. It runs the thing. They don't have to pay to truck it to wherever for landfill. It's just a win-win situation. But it has to be done properly. The plants are not cheap. They're about the cost of a small oil rig. But nationally, that can be done. And this is where council needs to work with other local government authorities to do it. The time I would suggest is much better spent working with them on that than the climate change initiative. Speaking of climate change, now that you brought it up, I brought that up. I just know the wording in the declaration about the climate change, in the thing about, the text goes something to the effect, climate change could affect the district at a faster rate and with more significant impacts than anticipated. Well, I would suggest that should be changed to a faster or slower rate. We don't know actually what's going to happen, if anything. And with more or less significant impacts. We don't know the impacts are going to be more significant. We don't have a clue. It could be both. Let's have those both options in there. And it says this could affect our current spatial financial infrastructure planning, but could, it says it would, but I would suggest change that to it could. And that's something where we should work with local government people on. One last one, that's my second part of my submission, was number 591. The harbour facility fees, well, let's talk about charges for Katuna boat ramp. I think if you have charges, you need to get a little bit smarter about it. Have some system, either QR codes are issued to people in their rates demand, and that's scanned by whoever monitors the thing. People that live locally don't pay. People that live 10 kilometres away pay a little bit. People that live in Thames, pay a lot more. You know, that's technology can do that sort of thing, have a tiered system of charges. I think maybe something we should be looking at. So the local people using that ramp don't have to pay, certainly not as much, and hopefully nothing compared to people that are coming from other districts to use our boat ramp, which council has spent very little money on compared to other boat ramps on the area. Looking out the window here. Last but not least, tsunami sirens, totally agree with what Linda's still here. Linda was saying about tsunami sirens. I've been in the Katuna Fire Brigade for about, well, I'm a life member now, but I was in there for over 30 years. We always had trouble with our sirens, trying to get it to stay up. And that is rather going up and down. But the sirens are well heard. We live 2 kilometres from Katuna Beach, double glazed windows, we can hear the sirens very well. Sometimes at night. We do not have cell phone coverage. So cell phone messages are not going to work, nor text messages. And there's a lot of people like us, especially on Katuna, with no cell phone coverage. So I think we need tsunami sirens. Doesn't matter if they're not nationally coordinated. I don't think people will know that something's happening. Even if it's going up and down, if it stays on for 10 minutes, people are going to know something's happening. End of story.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Okay.
Sandra.
Alistair, totally supportive of the protect the night skies and would like to see it go much wider. But do you think we need to be part of that international thing and just pay an international body for doing nothing?
We're not paying them anything, it's free. But what they require is that we have legislation, because otherwise it's just words. If you have legislation to control people's lighting, exterior lights only in the future, that indicates to them that we're serious about it.
I'm not sure that I would agree with you that it's free. But anyway, that's fine.
Okay,
When
we are not going to have a discussion now. We're going to ask questions.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
You
So when you
want to have a
say-
discussion. Come on, you lay the rules down.
So when you're talking about legislation,
Yes.
do you mean at Wellington level or
No,
council level in terms of
council
planning?
level, in particular for the Katuna Peninsula, we're looking at the moment.
So if we do that,
Hey, the hardest
That could
one
be a model for
is the mayor.
no, this is still a question. If we do that, we don't need to be part of that international network.
To have their designation, we do have to have that legislation in place. They will not go further with us until they see the legislation in place. Enforceable, legally enforceable
There's
legislation.
nothing there.
Martin.
So I just do have a question. Do you think that money would be better spent on, and it's probably not council spending it, on cell phone coverage in these areas rather than it being spent on sirens? Because the cell phones would give an increasing range of.
Sure, I'd love to have cell phone coverage, but I think it's hugely expensive without topography. I don't know, I'm not an expert in that field. I'd love to see it's better cell phone coverage. And once that's achieved, then you don't have to worry about the sirens perhaps. But sirens are good for people on the beach. You want to have their cell phones with them. You know, they'll know something's happening. And walk.
Well, that's handy.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Alistair.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on now via Microsoft Teams. Tim Heason, page 350.
Yes, kia ora, Tim Hooson speaking. Trust you can all hear me satisfactorily. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Hello?
Speak up.
Do you want to see me as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's his option. That's your option. You might like to put up Elvis Presley.
Okay. Cool, Tim Hooson tēnei. I am a long-term ratepayer, 20 years plus in the district, and have the blessing of now being a permanent resident for the last 3 or 4 years. My concern and application to the councillors in this committee is around a concern about the accessibility on and off the peninsula and across the peninsula, in particular with regards to unsealed roads in the centre of the peninsula. I live currently on the 309 road and have been able to observe that over the last 20 years. My proposition to this group is that, and my concern, I guess, is really that the unsealed roads in our region require specific funding for seal extension, and that this should be part of the 21-23 long-term plan, specifically in the area of the east-west connections. And I'll just quickly explain the reasons why I think about that. But ultimately what I'm asking for is that the requirements as outlined in the transport activity management plan, the objectives that are outlined there, which are already documented and cover the broad business case for it, that those are actually embedded as a line item, specifically in the long-term plan, because over the period of the next 10 years, I believe that it's going to be an essential activity that needs to be undertaken. And I don't think at the moment that it's appropriately recognised for business case development, design and implementation. So what I'm really referring to in all of that is that I fully recognise that Waka Kotahi are responsible for the main state highways up either side of the peninsula. However, we're fully aware that both of those state highways are prone to a series of everything from slips and flooding and so on. And when that happens, the essential crossroads, especially through the middle of the peninsula, the Kapukara Glen and the 309 roads, become highly relied on for access on and off the peninsula. And as a consequence, and I will admit, slightly unfortunately as a resident, I personally quite like the idea that the 309 road is a gravel road, but I've tested with a number of my neighbours. I've tested with a small sample of about 20 neighbours. All of them now admit that whilst they love the gravel road of the 309, that it's now at a point where it probably needs to be considered to be fully sealed. It currently is about 50% sealed, but it needs to be fully sealed simply for the district resilience, to be able to get on and off the peninsula, but also for the safety concerns that are increasing with the increasing usage across them, both of local residents. Local business use those roads quite a lot, especially a number of trucks run across those roads every day, and also, of course, visitors. Interestingly, I'll just point you towards, and in case you aren't fully familiar with it, but I'll point you towards the 21 Land Transport Activity Management Plan for yourselves. It had 4 problem statements, and I'll just quickly read problem statement 3.
1 minute left. 1 minute left, Tim.
Thank you very much. Problem statement 3 basically states that the unsealed network is not meeting the demands created by the seasonal peak usage and challenging climate and the topography and remoteness, and can result in a lower than level service and increased costs. We all know that the gravel roads are more expensive to maintain than the tar seal ones. And when you break that down, the breakdown of that problem statement clearly states that the unsealed routes are key to the east-west linkages across the district. So my request of this, of the councillors in this group, is to consider a line item in the long-term plan that specifically talks about investigating the tar seal extension across those roads within the period of the 10-year long-term plan timeframe.
Thank you. Questions of Tim? Questions of Tim? Any questions? Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, we've caught up a little bit, and I was going to ask, we have Matarangi here, Glenn Leach, Mark Bedford, Alistair McCormick. No doubt you're all talking on the same thing. Who wants to start? We'll take all three of you together or three separately. I take it as a four submissions.
We're happy to be together if that's
Okay, there's four submissions. There's four submissions. I'm happy that you do together and I'll give you 20 minutes.
Romance.
Well, you get through it a lot. You get through it a lot faster than that, but come up and we'll do it all together now.
Okay. So submissions.
We hope there's a singing routine to go with it.
Who are the four? The four are Glenn Leach. Yeah. Mark Bedford. So 219, 320, Alistair McCormick on 328 and Alistair McCormick on 599. All right. So we're taking all four of those submissions together.
Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi hoki o hau. I mihi mahana tēnā ki a koutou. No mai haere mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Can I sit down quick?
Yeah, friendly, you can all come and sit down. The model.
Soapbox.
We can't accept bribes and corruption.
Unless it's food.
Welcome. The floor is yours to do it.
Did you say soapbox or wine box?
Soapbox there. It was Winston Peters that had the soapbox. A wine box.
Yeah, one box.
Wine box, yeah.
I think Alistair will go first. I'll follow and then whatever you want first. Oh, Glenn's first, sorry.
Oh, thanks, Alistair. We all go, boss?
Yep, way go.
Okay, look, firstly, thank you, and for being here. I know what sort of time it is for all of you and the sort of submission time. It's not easiest of times, a lot to be absorbed. Anyway, I can take it that my submission has been met. I take that as read, and I just want to touch on a couple of other issues. Firstly, I just want to thank Denise Ritchie, Joe Malcolm and Alistair Thompson for their representation to you guys yesterday, I think. And I endorsed what had been said by those three submitters. And I also accept the fact that what's coming up, unless I rush for the door and shut it and run away from the next coming two presenters also. Can I just say to you that my issue is all about the fact of really being responsible. And I want to touch on the thing from Thames. And the issue from Thames was Montitled. Way back in 1998 or thereabouts, the Montitled issue developed in regards to flooding and seawater getting in around a subdivision that had been designed, built by Thames District Council, not TCDC, but Thames District Council. In the amalgamation, it became a responsibility, no matter what, to TCDC because it was part and parcel historically. That stop bank was built all the way around there under Luxie, and I take my hat off to him, under Chris, and was done on the basis that the financial contribution was 50% district. And Chris said to me that took some doing because there were some people who disagreed totally with it, but he got it. 50% district, 50% local content, which also included a local rate on those people living in close by. 330 thereabout houses, a school, a play centre, all the infrastructure done and dusted 1998, district contribution. The other issue that I want to catch up on is the contamination issue. Now, the contamination issue took place under my term at council as mayor, and wasn't very easy because we had a financial problem in respect that we were 40% out over our own requirement expenditure when I took over in November 2010, 40% above what council had set in respect of expenditure. So we had to upgrade that to 150% instead of 100 just to get by, and got hit with Montitled at the same time. So Montitled to me was a thing where we had the Minister for the Environment and we had the Regional Council on top of us saying, move the building, get rid of it, dig the place down a metre deep, reinstate it with virgin soil, and where the hell that was going to come from, and then rebuild the infrastructure and put the houses back on. Now, you can imagine the cost. So here we had a situation with 300 odd people, homes, families concerned. So the communication thing that we had to do and how we went about it was assure them that we weren't going to bail. And we stayed with them. And we got good sound advice from health, because that was the main issue for a starter, and good sound advice out of Australia, who a good mate of mine put me on to the company, who were consultants dealing with contamination and mining. At the end of the day, without going through it, we won the day. Dalla Hood from Waikato Health Board supported us to the full when we understood exactly what the problems were. At the end of the day, district picked all the costs involved with Monetary up, because it was a responsibility of a past council who did the subdivision, but I could not relinquish, and my council could not relinquish, and they didn't, the responsibility that we had to put it right. No different to what happened with Chris Lux in 1998. So all I want to say to you is that this issue at Matarangi has been around for a long, long, long time. It's cost the community and council a huge amount of money to overcome it. We've got to understand that we did not have to spend any money had procedure taken place properly way back and making sure that the covenants were put on by council checking that the covenants were put back on with Hodgins and Watson. No money would be changing hands today or be requested to. It was not a problem of Matarangi individually or Mercury Bay that caused this situation. It was a problem that procedure never followed through. So how you can turn that around and just say, leave it, walk away from it, and let the likes of Matarangi few pick it up. The golf course is part of open space. The houses that are built onto it look over open space. All our walkways around Matarangi are open space. The issue is that...
You've had 5.
Okay, so I'll just sign off and say, to me, the issue is open space. If it was in your backyard and you had a developer advocating to build on a reserve, whether it be Coromandel, Whangamata, Thames or anywhere else, you would object. Now, this is what's happened here, and it is not up to the individuals at Matarangi to put right. I admire where they've been, and I close and say, we have a chance to put this right. We do not want to end up back in litigation and spend more money chasing a problem that should have been dealt with some time ago. Thanks.
Whoever, you'll call.
Questions at the end?
Well, questions at the end. We'll take questions at the end.
Good, good, good. Thank you. First of all, I'm representing both myself and the Matarangi Community Trust. And I guess I want to say thank you to Council first. I appreciate the number of submissions. This looks like a full printout of the submissions, and I have to say I've been through and read every one of them myself because I wanted to get a picture of it, and so I've laboured for some days. So I appreciate very much what you're doing, sitting here over and above reading them. Now you have to listen to us all, and so thank you for that. I also want to thank the Mercury Bay Community Board. They've been very supportive, and we welcome the support in their submission. And above all, we've had tremendous support and cooperation with the council staff over a long period of time. So thank you for that. I want to also acknowledge Ngāti Hei and Ngāti Hariri. They have both made a submission on this to this long-term plan, and I want to just quote briefly from one of them, the Ngāti Hei submission, that said, the Maori used to occupy almost all the eastern seaboard of this island. We are left with very little. The best thing we can do is to protect it.
referring to this piece of land there. So it's about for them and for us, it's about that environment. That's a precious bit of coastline. It's recognised as having coastal scenic value, and surrounded by the harbour and the lakes, it's an extraordinary piece of environment. And that was what, in 1977, the Town and Country Planning Appeal Board said should be kept as a reserve. And look at it, it's in private hands, it's in private ownership. So, anyway, from about 1900, think about that whole spit reaching back from there, enclosing the harbour. From about 1900, it was farmed. Joe Davis thinks that it was sold to pay for the funeral expenses of the great chief, but it's clearly, looking at the submissions, it's clearly quite murky as to how it came to be in private hands. From 1960, it was seen as a spit that could be developed like other spits in Coromandel and up north of Northland and so on. And gradually that happened. There have been a series of developers, but interesting enough, we're now close to the time when there will be no more developers. There's one more subdivision to go and it's all done. And at that point, there will be no longer a need in future district plans for a structure plan for Matarangi. And it's that structure plan which governs the open space at the moment. Referring to council's responsibilities, think again of that undeveloped spit in 1960. Council has overseen the development of that spit all the way through. They are the one body that's been there all the time with the plan and the responsibility to see that it met planning requirements and it protected the environment and created a place for the community. And it's been pretty successful by and large, but we have had hiccups on the way. And so several times we've had to go to the Environment Court, quite frequently, quite frankly, over the years. The Matarangi people, leaders of that community, have gone to the Environment Court or its predecessor, and the single most important issue every time has been protecting the open space, and especially open space like that, which has got so much bird life, so much. It's actually got around its perimeter also some quite important stands of Kānaka and other native species. And that's the other thing about that spit, is that it's vulnerable. And this was recognised in 1977 by the Old Town and Country Planning Appeal Board, who asked the Hari Catchment Board and a lot of others for significant evidence, deep evidence about the engineering of that spit. Actually, they just a year or two prior to that had the disaster with Omaha, north of Auckland, where a whole lot of houses got swept away. And so that they said, the Town and Country Planning Appeal Board, no building within 100 metres of the seashore, no building within 40 metres of the harbour side, and that area there, which is beyond a 300-metre line, you can see one house down there. Beyond that line should be a reserve, because it's vulnerable. And this council actually did that for 20 years. For 2 decades, they designated it as a reserve. Then they did the deal with Hodgson and Watson. It was actually quite a sensible deal. Let them look after it as a golf course. But as long as it remains that if it, by default, a reserve, if there's no longer a golf course there, well, all that failed, and you know that history. We had rogue developers who actually, instead of putting the covenant on, mortgaged it. And the HSBC got first priority. And in the end, the HSBC was out of pocket to over 14 million because of what they lent those particular developers. So come forward to 2019, we, you and us together combined to defend that space against a private developer who wanted to turn a lot of it into residential. And that really got the backs of Matarangi up to where we've worked very closely together over a decade to get a fantastic result out of the Environment Court. And probably the most important thing out of that decision, it was written up by the planners, was to say planning history matters. The history of how Matarangi was developed, all the plans said this and the rest of the golf course, because this here, these bits here, were also part of the district plan because they separated housing cells. The district plan said Matarangi needs to be developed in housing cells with open space between. And that's what these bits are here, in compliance with the plan of this council. And so the Environment Court really, when you summed it up, had no hesitation in saying that history matters. This was developed in compliance with council planning requirements, and with the decision that there should be a reserve. Now,
you've got about 5.5 minutes left, just so you know.
I don't need it, thank you.
I'm well conscious of Mark.
But we hope there might be some questions. And we're not at the end of the road, because district plans come and go, still in private ownership, and the only way you can protect land like that is to get to a situation where there is a covenant over it which protects it in perpetuity. And that is the aim of the residents of Matarangi. And we've got quite a few steps to go to get there. So I agree with the submission yesterday that you heard from Denise Ritchie. And there are many other planners who have been involved in these proceedings. I should have put the whole box up, but these two will do. Not quite as big as that, but this is what happens. That one is what is for the hearings of the commissioners on the district plan. That one is for the Environment Court to get that decision. What did they all cost between them? Somewhere, that bundle, and everything's there, somewhere between $800 and $1 million. What waste? What a complete waste when it could have been dealt with originally. And that's the situation that really bothers us. So that is why we're here, asking for council's help to sort it out now, so that we're not back there. Do you know why those people, do you know why the people who formed the company that owns it now did it? They clubbed together to stop it continuing in the High Court. They saved us all a lot of further expense by keeping it out of the High Court. Everybody's seen it now. You've got the image. So thank you very much for propping it up. We'll take it away shortly. One more thing, just quickly. I've emphasised how much it is about that particular environment, and that picture above all captures it. But the second thing about Matarangi is its community. Since 2019, when the previous owner, who was trying to put housing on, since he left, Matarangi has flourished. And it's flourished as a community. It has turned round. It was a despondent place in many ways, but now it's vibrant. And it is used as a golf course. It's very sensible to look after 48 hectares as a golf course, 48 hectares of open space, which has to be a reserve. So you may as well keep it mowed and looked after. by a golf club, as long as they can survive. And the other thing that's happened is that along with the golf club, which has boomed, there's been a community club formed based on that facility, and it's now got over 600 members. And they're there, they play bowls, they have yoga, they play mahjong, bridge, all sorts of things. And that facility is now a community facility. It's fantastic the way the community has suddenly flourished at Matarangi, and it's all because we have got some additional certainty about the future of that particular land. So I'll hand over to Mark, and then
he's got about 2 minutes. He's got about 2 minutes because usually this is time, so wait a minute.
Chairman, if I may, he and I each have 10 minutes between us because we had private submissions. In addition to, you gave us collectively 25 minutes.
I gave you collectively 20 minutes, and I've done that. I've been very generous. We'll hear from Mark because I'm not going to argue.
Your Worship, fellow councillors, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to acknowledge Emeritus Professor Alistair McCormick. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional about this, but it's been a journey, hell has it ever. We want to also acknowledge the close working relationship that we've had with TCDC. You know, it wasn't that long ago that we went to your audit committee and we embarked on a journey to work together to try and solve this problem, you know. Go forth and multiply. And so it was with some disappointment when the actual LTP document came out that there was no background. There was not a lot of background. And yes, the councillors had it, but the people on the peninsula hadn't. And so we had endless inquiries. We ran workshops all over Easter to explain to people that you're not purchasing a bloody golf course. We're trying to protect this valuable open space. That is the issue. And you will see in some of your submissions, we are not propping up a golf course. We don't want to subsidise the operation of a golf course. There was a little bit of misinformation that I think could have been handled better. We didn't have a problem with the addition of a third option of do nothing, but we did have a problem that became the council preferred option without reference to us, because actually the audit committee had tasked through the chief executive and senior officers to go ahead and work with the community in Matarangi to solve this problem. So we, and I don't really apologise for appearing in the media and saying we see that as a flip-flop, but it's not the end of the road. What we're asking, we want to get back around the table. We want to solve this, and doing nothing is actually just going to kick the ball to touch for another generation to solve. We have an opportunity. We have to deal with it. I'm getting there. Don't worry.
1 minute.
So I have a submission here, which I'll speak very briefly to, but I've got copies for everybody. Basically, we wish to achieve 3 objectives. We want broad community ownership of the Matarangi community open space. We want to protect it in perpetuity, these open spaces, by appropriate covenants on the titles. We want a sustainable financial structure for the owners of the land that ensures the properties can be maintained forever as open space. It's interesting, our own analysis of the LTP submissions, and Alistair has read every single one of them, something I can't claim that I have done, but of 1,048 submissions that expressed an interest or an opinion on the Matarangi community objective, 70% supported council funding for the broad community ownership envisaged in the proposal. I would suggest respectfully to council, you cannot and you should not ignore that. Finally, I'd like to note that the future ownership of the properties can only be resolved by negotiation with the current landholders, Matarangi Landholding Limited. They are not here. Protection in perpetuity will be by covenant registered as an encumbrance on the titles, and Matarangi community fully supports further development of open space such as a multi-purpose community centre, the Spit Walkway, the golf course, lawn bowls and any other appropriate community initiative. I don't think council in any way can ignore the support and not engage with the Matarangi community to solve this problem. We are still willing partners.
Questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question. First of all, I commend you for wanting to retain your land in your community. Fantastic. We hear you about the covenants. We heard yesterday that that there was a desire to maybe do a targeted rate to cover the difference. Are you supportive of that kind of approach?
Yes, we are. The purpose of the targeted rate is not to support a golf course. That's the first thing. It is actually to support maintaining the open space as if it were just an open reserve. And I believe your officers have calculated what that would take. Secondly, it is to support a community centre for Matarangi in the building. Thirdly, if there is any loan to be repaid over a period of time, then it would include the repayment of that loan and the interest on it. So there is no sense in which it is to prop up a golf course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to move on to Lee Hopper. Lee has two submissions. One is on page 221 and one is on page 271. So,
Thank you.
yeah, it's all good. So,
thank you.
Lee, we're going to amalgamate those, so you've got 10 minutes.
Mr. Hopper, back up there, Lee, 2 seconds.
Just hand a copy of. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is it?
When I understood on having that oversight. So it's good.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to present here today. I'll get Dave Lamison, who you all know, to just kick off first. Dave's done a little paper and a bit of research behind population, demographics and change. So that was just a good precursor. And I'll read out the notes I've prepared and circularise with you, just to be succinct, not waste your time. Thank you. Dave.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we take it that you've read the submissions from Winning Waterways. The submitter Winning Waterways is a major landowner in Thames-Coromandel District, specifically in Mercury Bay. Winning Waterways is part way through constructing the district's largest development, which has approximately 500 to 600 residential allotments to construct and several significant other integrated land use projects yet to build. The submitters carefully viewed the long-term plan for the Thames-Coromandel District and makes the following points relating to that submission. The long-term plan is the roadmap for making sure our activities, projects, work programs and budgets serve our Coromandel communities well now and for the next 10 years. Waterways is very concerned with the infometrics, population and growth projections for the next 30 years. Over the last 18 years, Mercury Bay's population has increased by 3,715 people. In Whitianga alone, the population has increased by 1,086 people from 2013 to 2018. That's a 5-year period. Over the last 4 years, new house building consents have been issued for 569 houses in Mercury Bay. Infometrics have confirmed that from 2019 to 51, Mercury Bay is projected to build 324 new houses over a 30-year period. Let's put this into perspective. Since 2019, 251 new house build consents have already been issued in Mercury Bay. In terms of the Infometrics projection, this means that Mercury Bay has another 73 houses to build over the next 30 years to meet their medium growth scenario. 73 houses over 30 years is 2.5 dwellings a year. It just doesn't seem realistic.
Anyone with half a brain can see that, geez.
The Infometrics report makes one statement that dwellings will continue to exist, but may be repurposed or eventually abandoned. Have you ever seen a house abandoned or removed from a site and not rebuilt in Mercury Bay? The answer is no. Unfortunately, there is a clear disconnect with the growth projections of Mercury Bay and Whitianga for the next 30 years. I've contacted several architects, local and out of town, that do a lot of business in the area, and they have work for this year and beyond, which is a positive sign. A few of the local architects are turning away 3 jobs a week because of the overload of work. Waterways expects growth to continue in Whitianga for the next 10 plus years. When there is growth in a particular area, the end result is demand on infrastructure and facilities. Waterways' position is that there needs to be a clear strategic analysis and investment in core infrastructure. The investment will need to keep up with population growth. The long-term plan currently does not reflect this, and it will be too late to address this as part of the next long-term plan review in 3 years' time. Waterways is concerned about the development contributions collected and its expenditure in Whitianga to maintain and upgrade infrastructure. I want to hand you over to Lee Hopper to discuss infrastructure matters and Waterways' vision for Whitianga and the Coromandel.
Thanks, Dave. I really want to talk primarily about imperatives to investment and just essential infrastructure of water and sewerage. So Summitt is a principal shareholder in Hopper Developments Limited. The company and its associates have significant investments in the Coromandel, with most of its activities currently in Whitianga. The district plan and the long-term plan have policies that state a desire to enable and encourage growth in and around existing communities. These policies also state that council will prioritise efforts to enable growth where there is clear evidence of demand for services and the risk to council outlay is low. Sensible. There is no community in the district, of course, that aligns better with these policies than Whitianga. It's further reinforced by more recent growth projections that Dave's just alluding to. The concern is that there may not be adequate planned council investment in essential infrastructure, principally sewage and water, to support the uninterrupted completion of the company's consented investments. Further, current development contributions may be insufficient. The Whitianga Waterways project, it might somewhat come back a bit, it might sound a bit dumb coming from a developer, but the very worst scenario that could happen to us is that in fact there's some interruption with our ability to complete. It can be financially very punitive, and it has happened to us in Whangarei. Declined a stage of development that interrupted our proceedings there, our stage development of a project for 3 years when we were at maximum capital outlay. So I think we were debt servicing what would be equivalent today in excess of $100 million, and the council says, sorry, you can't carry on, because they didn't deliver services when they comprehensively consented that they had capacity for our entire development over its total life. It was a major interruption. The Whitianga Waterways project is approximately 50% through its staged development of residential allotments. Commitment to this comprehensively planned project has required a long-term view and significant investment. Current investment is well in excess of $100 million. Company has outlaid heavily in roading infrastructure, vested lands, publicly accessible waterways, sports fields and extension to the airfield. Other initiatives include, some of them yet to be built, a gateway zone for national retailers, improved and expanded medical facilities, retirement facilities, marine servicing facilities and tourist accommodation associated retail. The objective of this investment is to create a highly attractive township, well supported with service standards that will enable employment opportunities, great lifestyles and positive outcomes for all. I believe this is the course Whitianga is on. Importantly, this growth will also generate healthy rate revenues, well in excess of the town's needs. That's partly by virtue of the way the rates are structured and the high property values being created by this development. 2018 research paper by Motu Economics and Public Policy Research, working paper 18/14, listed Whitianga as New Zealand's top quality of life. They call that QL township. So they do a paper done by the government, for the government, balancing quality of life and quality of business. Clearly, Whitianga doesn't yet have a quality of business status, very high, but we have New Zealand's highest quality of life status, ahead of Queenstown and other more renowned towns. COVID-19 has taught us New Zealand that you do not need to run a business and remain in New Zealand. There are lifestyle choices such as Whitianga. We need to capture that market also. So this is technology will deliver more demand as we've seen a lifestyle change in the way we go about many of us go about our work. So we're not expecting a decline in demand, that we're expecting acceleration in demand as a result of recent times and recent events. If investors and the council are to sustain the momentum with its clearly desirable outcomes, it is imperative essential council service standards are planned and maintained to enable continued growth. So with regard to water supply, in recent years, we've seen the imposition of water supply restrictions. In discussion with the council's engineers, we understand a new resource consent application is in process to take more from the current river source. We also advise that the operational funds are earmarked over the next 2 years for investigation into further sources to meet future demand. And there are realistic options available there. The issue of tanks concerns me. Tanks have been mooted as an alternate to council supply. Unfortunately, tanks have limited capacity, are unsightly, raise health risks, reduce property amenity, and are at risk of floating in areas with a high water table or during severe rain events. And we know much of Whitianga is low-lying and the water table comes to the surface. Tanks are restricted as to location on a property by district plan rules, and often private property covenants, which are generally imposed to deliver quality landscape and aesthetic outcomes. Tanks should be discouraged when not prohibited by private covenants. I would encourage council to embrace this view. It would go a long way to maintaining and enhancing the township's emerging landscape values and retain its lifestyle status. The collective cost of providing any realistic capacity towards self-containment, that's putting tanks in, will far exceed the centralised cost of a council augmented scheme. Sewerage. The long-term plan draft budget currently has no provision for expenditure on sewage to increase capacity in Whitianga. In discussion with council engineers, it is apparent there is a need to increase the capacity of the sewage treatment facility as flows are increasing. This may include the addition of a third reactor or construction of a balance tank. We're advised the implications of an overloaded plant and non-complying discharges could be very damaging to the catchment's quality environment, surrounding property values, and hard-earned lifestyle status. It would be a shame can you imagine the headlines when you've got this status and we don't meet a condition of subdivision consent, a condition of discharge consent into the environment, it'll be all over the paces. People love to denigrate this town and all the effort that we've got to getting here. Development contributions. The submitter is also concerned about development contributions, as I alluded to before. Development contributions are taken to enable additional capacity for growth. They should be designed, a development contribution policy should be designed to take all of the capital required to be invested by council to meet capacity requirements at clearly defined service standards. I don't believe council has that at the moment. Without going into the complexities of the contribution policy, it is noted that the amount to be charged in Whitianga is to reduce from $20,345 to $16,617. This raises concerns that the amount may not be sufficient to maintain capacity for growth at any reasonable standards. The risk is that future ratepayers will bear the burden of any current undercharging. There is no information available on the current account balances by community or district. Summary, Hopper Developments and its subsidiaries are committed to advancing Whitianga as a leading lifestyle destination. The concern is that council is not adequately planning and funding essential infrastructure to support the uninterrupted completion of the company's consented activities and other development in Whitianga. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Questions of Lee?
So can I just clarify? I note that you're looking at a 50 houses per year on year, and that's for so that that needs to be taken into account for both wastewater and water provision, and accounted for in the future expansion of whatever plants we've got. Based on, you've got your own sort of spreadsheet, or mind you, that's pretty simple to work out, isn't it? Year on year. Okay, so I noticed that you identified the priority for Thames for future expenditure. So you want that priority also for Whitianga in terms of water and wastewater as well, over and above all other projects?
Well, if you look at the council standing policies, both you've advertised in your LTP, you'll prioritise where the risks, the demand is clear and the risks are low. That would be common sense. Fundamental. Should be fundamental. It's fundamental to enterprise. It should be fundamental to government. That doesn't seem so fundamental to me. Your LTP has certainly got quite a leaning towards a major outlay towards, so I'll use your words, unlocking the potential of Thames. I'm sorry, I'm a developer, I don't know what the hell that means. But I can certainly tell you that we have demonstrable demand here, and that's going to continue at the current rate or better. And we're appealing to council to ensure that we have the capacity on sewage and water. Simple as that, Sam.
I think it's the reverse is probably the case for Thames. They've got the capacity, but they haven't got the They haven't got the demand. Yeah, they've got the demand, but they've got no housing, got no subdivision. Anyway, so no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question of David? You said how many building consents were issued here from 2019 to now?
The last 4 years, 569.
Yeah, 569 over 4 years?
Over 4 years.
Yeah, and which leaves our 50 actually looking...
Well, that's alpha.
Yeah.
Conservative.
Yeah.
No.
So when you take it...
Uppers versus the rest. So
all
a lot more growth than us.
The picture's quite a lot more than 50.
Yeah.
Jerry.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Yeah, I agree with the inframetrics is very confusing for us as well. There was discussion about putting infrastructure into Thames to encourage development. Would that encourage you to go and look over there as a developer, or how would you look at it?
Well, it's an essential component to investment. So, if Thames has aspirations to rezone land, it should ensure that it has the capacity. There's no point in rezoning land and to enable a particular land use if you can't actually or don't supply the infrastructure capacity at the same time. But standing here at the moment, I'm not comfortable that there is any demand at an economic, makes any economic sense for residential property in Thames.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm happy to be proved otherwise and would love to come and invest, but
You've got the experience.
I can only answer you based on the knowledge I have at the moment.
Okay, any other questions from Lee?
So I think two important things here is potable water supply. The wastewater, we had a good meeting with Bruce Hinson, council's engineer, and I think even Bruce, he might chime in, but even Bruce is saying that we need to have a look at the wastewater plant as an upgrade in the next 3 years or so, and that's not in your long-term plan. So, and that's
You've answered the question.
Sure.
We're not going to give you a chance to do another submission. Now, would you like to table your documents?
Yours.
I can email them.
Yeah, if you could.
I'll do that. But you've already got them.
I've got the
we got
two.
that.
Thank you for your experience.
Oh, can I just ask a question around that survey?
Yeah, that was
The demographics, how did this come about?
That was from the ratepayers, Whittinger Ratepayers Association, got that, and Lee Salters passed that on to us.
And how did she base her information, like solely on the 2018 consensus?
Right, mainly on the statistics, yes, and the census.
Right, okay, okay.
Well, I think the Infometrics, to be fair to Infometrics, they said COVID was going to basically ruin us for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
It did.
And it did the complete opposite. So, and it's made people think, well, am I living in Auckland still?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Do I have to work in Auckland and can I get out?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
We're going to move on to William Muir.
Thank you.
Page 219.
Thank you for the opportunity all here. I appreciate the time you put into all this, especially for that there. It makes mine look fairly insignificant, but one of the main reasons that I put in the submissions is I take it that the costs and stuff evaluated by council to boat ramps in particular, it was Quarry Point, which I gather is the Katuna Quarry Point. And there'll be a charge on launching boats. And it just occurred to me that if that was the ambitions of council to do so, did they take into account the money that's been spent at Matarangi, Wangapara and Mercury Bay in launching facilities, compared to charging the same amount of money for the facilities at Katuna. And really, Tony, you've always said that the user pays, and this seemed to be a sort of an easy way out, or a very convenient way. But I've spoken to a few people that use it around Katuna, and they had no idea this is going on, because you know how many, a lot of people don't worry with the submissions or anything. And should you do so, as long as it's done with an informed decision. I live in Katuna, so I use the ramp. The Wangapara, I don't use Wangapara's ramp or Matarangi's ramp. There'll be a good 30% of the year with an easterly wind, they can't even get out over the bar. So those ramps that the councils have spent huge amounts of money on become redundant, and they all come over to Katuna. So my reasoning here is that to charge the local people in Katuna $20 or $200 a year to launch your boat is excessive, and will be seen as excessive under the circumstances, because it's not one shot fits all. I mean, do you charge the same for, if it gets down the argument as well, how you do it? It has been suggested in Katuna that the residents and ratepayers there have a sticker on their trailer and they get it as a reduced rate, or whatever council sees. I mean, there are answers for it. And then the other one was put to me, do they charge the same amount for using the sports fields out here, of which substantial amounts of money annually go into maintaining the sports fields? And so it is a recreation thing, and we are a seafaring sort of people, and that's what we do out there at Katuna, and it was just seemed to be excessive. the other thing I was on the other subject was the recycling. And this basically comes from my wife, who goes and puts all these plastics in the landfill and says, why doesn't council, how is it Hamilton Council can recycle sort of plastics down up to about number 7, whatever, and yet we can't do it. And I haven't got an answer for that, so I've come along to put that to everyone. I'd love the answer, but other people have said to me about what they have in Europe and that the incinerators, and therefore it's done in countries that are Switzerland and places like this that really have a high demand for the ecology and everything, but they can have incinerators producing power, and it just seems to me that we're sort of just kicking the can down the road and not really looking for a better alternative. Yeah, so that's the basis to my submissions. I just hope everyone has an open mind here, with this.
Questions of Bill?
Oh, you've got one quick one. Yeah, I agree with you on the 3 to 7 plastics that go to landfill. Some other areas they are dealing with the 5, so don't know why we're not doing, or the company's moving into more 1s and 2s, but I agree with you totally. It's a waste of space.
Well, if we have to recycle them, I think council, I don't know what council does as far as put pressure on supermarkets and manufacturers, but when you look at ice cream containers and yogurt containers and that, they've got to go into the landfill. And just, I'm sure there must be some sort of reason, but I'm also sure that there are answers.
China doesn't.
I can just interrupting. I can tell you that this community board has had meetings with both the supermarkets here, asking to label their 1s and 2s and to stop bringing plastics into town. But the supermarkets they've got their own agendas.
Yeah,
but
sure.
to be fair, I'll say one supermarket takes all its plastics and all its cards and all its recyclables from its own warehouse out of town.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah.
I shouldn't answer your question, but I will.
Good argument.
Okay, any other questions of Bill? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to David Rushforth on page 339. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
She's not here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Rushforth, Chairman of the Tyrol Heritage Society. I'd like to thank you for your opportunity to speak to you now. I apologise that I don't have any paper copies of my report, so if you want them, I can send them by email, but I will try to speak not too fast. I'd like to speak to the proposal to build an extension to the Tyrol Library to house a heritage centre there. It's presently on the nice to have option and to be funded by local rates. Firstly, I'd like to underline some of the key points in my written submission, and then I'll add some other important considerations. Since it was established, the Heritage Society has had a building of a Tyrol Heritage Centre as its key objective. It has organised a wide range of events to raise funds to build one, and it currently has about $35,000 in the bank for that project. It has wide community support. There are about 50 Friends of Heritage who pay around an annual subscription, and many more people in the community who are involved in our various shows, fetes, exhibitions, etc., and all of them have been very well attended. We support the idea of a community hub on the roof, under one roof in Tyrol, and that makes good sense to us to share facilities and also to make a clear destination. We also agree that the community board has project to move the project from the no frills nice to have to the no frills must do budget funded by local rates, and we support that. So while we accept that the proposal is perhaps not essential, we do strongly believe that there are many good reasons why Tyrol deserves and needs a heritage centre. Let me briefly go over some of those. We have a vision of a place, of a community that the community can be proud of, and where we can celebrate the rich heritage and the unique heritage of our area. Tyrol has a Mara history which stretches back 800 years, where as an archaeological dig there found a fishing lure made from a pearl shell which is not found in New Zealand waters and in an undisturbed bidden at the base of Paku. It is therefore one of the oldest artefacts ever found in Aotearoa. It is unique and is currently on display in the Auckland Museum. Also, we have a colourful and rich European history, which started in 1842, when the camp in the forest was established at Te Karo Bay to take cargo spars for the Royal Navy. This was followed by a busy timber industry with sawmills, and which continued until the start of the 20th century. There have been logs and kauri gum taken out of our port for many, many years on a large scale. Farming added to that, and then, of course, there were the rich gold mines in the hills. So we have many stories to tell, and we feel that the young people of Tairoa deserve to have a better appreciation of their heritage, especially as heritage becomes, and history become a more important part of the school curriculum. It's important that our history does not disappear, and if we don't do something about it soon, that is quite possible. We also feel that we'll allow the local community to better understand and share their history with other people in the community, and it will enable local businesses to benefit, as visitors are encouraged to spend more time and money in our town. It's a place for visitors to go when the weather is wet, although we know that there are many things to do in Tyrol when the weather is not. It would also contribute to making the Coromandel as a whole a more interesting destination for tourism and the economy of the region as a whole. So, we have had many, mostly useful and helpful discussions with the Council and Community Board to try to find a suitable location for the Heritage Centre in Tairoa. These have ranged from a combined information centre and heritage centre on the campground, which is adjacent to the library, to putting a separate building next to our community hall near the Petrie Bridge. We've even looked at the possibility of putting something on the Noiro Ferry down at the marina. We've talked to people like Keith Hay, we've talked to the Lotteries Board, and we've really explored as many possibilities as possible. Now, the Community Board, in its wisdom, has decided that the site next to the library is our best option, and we support that. What we now need, however, provided that it gives us our minimum area of 120 square metres, is a concrete project which we can promote and market to our potential funders. We have a momentum and an enthusiasm with a passionate committee, which is at risk of losing its momentum if it stays as a nice-to-have project. If we move it to a must-do project, we understand from council staff that the extra burden per rateable unit to the local ratepayers will be of the order of $11.60 spread over 2 years as capital expenditure project, which we do not feel is excessive. Tyrol Heritage Society is very happy to raise other funding as required to fit out and to operate the Heritage Centre once it's been built. And we are confident that an extension to the existing library building will not compromise its existing attractiveness, but it could enhance it by widening and deepening the utility to a wider public, and by working closely with the original architects with whom we've also been in contact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well timed. Well timed.
I did practice.
Question to David?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Maggie Johnson now wants to go to 2:30, so she will probably be the last submitter of the day, so we'll break for lunch now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just slow them down.